Welcome back. If you like politics, you love nights like this here, not only where the races are for tomorrow, but a lot of fascinating issues that won't even just be decided tomorrow, including some interesting revelations in a book about both Hillary and Chris Christie, and also some of their presidential ambitions. All right, but now we're going to stay closer to home here. 2 county executive races in our region, to me at least, the most interesting races of the night tomorrow night. Up first, the Nassau rematch on Long Island. The battle for county exec there features the same 2 guys that we were talking about on election night 4 years ago. And frankly, we didn't know the winner at the end of that election night here because the margin was so short. This time, it is the incumbent Republican Ed Mangano, and he faces the man that he beat by less than 400 votes back in 2009, former Democratic county exec Tom Suozzi. There's been only one source of polling in the race, that from News 12 Newsday in Siena, and they had this race even on primary day in September. But since then, they've seen a margin shift here. Mangano has been consistently out in front. He's ahead in the final poll by about 11 points, but I spoke to both of the candidates, and the only thing they could agree on between the 2 of them is who knows where the numbers are, because the numbers were so wrong the last time when Mangano surprised them by so much, but that was part of a wave election. Oh, yeah. As objective as you can be, and we all bring our baggage when we look at these things, but I don't see the compelling argument for Mangano in that yet the Financial Control Board took control of the finances of Long Island. It was so bad. We saw the fiasco with the Lighthouse Project. You saw the Islanders packing their bags and getting out of town. Yeah, property taxes held, but you talk to people on the local level, and you know this, right? You talk to the mayors, you talk to the town supervisors, etc. All the assessments and everything have gone up through the roof. There is a lot of arguments that the 4 years have not been great to Nassau, but yet Mangano, people would say, was probably going to be the betting man's favorite tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the Islanders and the loss of tax revenue from Nassau Coliseum, what that brings, and people are moving, over 5,000 residents, 5,000 fewer residents today than there were when he took office.
Especially younger people.
Right, and bringing in the national politics and the government shutdown and the Tea Party. He was a Tea Party darling in 2009 and barely won in a year where Tea Party guys were winning by 10 to 15 points. I look at these polls, he's right at 50. You always want to be a little north of 50, which he is. Leads me to believe this race is going to be real close, just as close as it was back in 2009.
I think, Dom, a storm can bring out the best or worst in a lawmaker. I think he acquitted himself well, did Mr. Mangano, in the storm that we saw a year ago. Mm-hmm. That said, though, I know registration's right pretty much down the middle on the island in Nassau. It's a tough one to figure for me. I really can't explain it, except I do think Tom Suozzi burned a lot of his equity when he decided to maybe get a little too big for his britches and run for statewide office a little early. I think it is political genesis here. I think he jumped the gun a little too soon.
Well, for Suozzi, he was forced after that race to humble himself and now go back
when he
before
got crushed by Spitzer, right?
Right, and now go back before the voters. And so, if this is going to be personality driven and based on, no offense to Mr. Mangano, and based on looks and so on, then Suozzi's got a real shot. You know, maybe voters want to give him another chance. I don't know, but I will say this much. I don't really see the rationale to replace the incumbent. What has been the great case? I watched Suozzi carefully when you interviewed him. I watched Mangano when you talked to him on Friday night. They're both sniping at each other.
I think no matter where you live, Andrew, if your finances are so bad, somebody has to take it over. I think we can all relate on this in some level. If you have to declare bankruptcy, right? That's a humbling moment. It's an embarrassing moment. If you're a county and basically the state says, or in the case the county finance board says, we're going to take it over for you. We don't trust your budgets. Your numbers are wrong here. You're playing a little free and easy with the math. That's not a good thing.
All those reasons that you gave, and even the fact that the registration numbers have started to lean Democratic in Nassau County, should have Suozzi beating Mangano, and they're not. And Mangano has been able to use a particularly effective defense, which is, it's his fault. It's the last guy's fault. I'm just trying to recover what happened with the last guy left me.
He didn't even take the hit on LIPA. Remember after the fiasco of the storm and everything that happened there, he didn't take as bad a hit on that. And at the end of the day, yes, everybody has it, but you were the guy in charge when it happened. He's managed to be Teflon a lot of this stuff.
He had a lot of the problems he's been able to push off either on the state or on his predecessor, and he just happens to be facing his predecessor in this election tomorrow. He shouldn't be holding his own in the numbers. I think he's going to win tomorrow.
All right,
That's what it is.
let me stay with you, Andrew, on the other county executive race, and that's in Westchester County. Republican Rob Astorino surprised many in the heavily Democratic county 4 years ago, winning the top job in county government despite a registration edge for Democrats. Well, tomorrow, he squares off against New Rochelle Mayor Democrat Noam Bramson, better known among political insiders in the county than among voters here. Astorino seems to enjoy bipartisan political support, and that has some in the state party calling him New York's Chris Christie. Maybe. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Now, he's got to still win tomorrow. No independent polling has really been done in the county, but the internal campaign polls has told us that Astorino is up somewhere between 4 and 14 points here, although some say that margin keeps getting closer and closer as the election day approaches. Again, there's been an embarrassing story that has dogged the county here for the last 4 years, although if you listen to Rob Astorino, he claims the positive for him, the federal discrimination lawsuit, which even if people don't care about the facts of the story, this is costing the county money, and it could potentially cost them even more, and I'm talking a lot of millions of dollars. Still, somehow, some way, if you hold the line, I guess, and say you're not going to raise property taxes, it doesn't matter all the other math, that seems to be enough nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a story like the Westchester housing settlement, some people follow it very closely and follow local and county politics very, very closely, but not a lot do. For a lot of people, it's sort of a gauge the wind and how everything sort of feels. And Westchester County feels like a better place than it was 4 years ago. It doesn't feel like it's in the same economic crisis it was. There's not the same level of fear in the county that there was among a lot of people.
I think it really depends on who you talk to. I think this is a classic case where if you wanted to stabilize a demographic, you know, a lot of stuff's happened in the last 4 years. Certainly, the 08 crisis didn't start here, but a lot of people were impacted by it. A lot of people go into New York for jobs. That has stabilized, whether it had anything to do with the county or not, so people are more calm about that. Property taxes have at least held, or there's a cap now. But the stuff that's gotten cut in this county,
but it's not impacting that many people. I mean, bus routes that are being cut don't impact that many people.
It's not impacting a lot of people maybe where the studio is. But if you do go to the Mount Vernons and the Yonkers of the world, a lot of those programs have had not make-believe, but real tangible impacts. And I'm talking about people who follow this.
But that's why I believe that Astorino's going to win, because he has been able to go into communities of color in Westchester County and cherry-pick the support of numerous prominent African-American clergy members.
His retail politics has been pretty good.
Very good, but he came in with the Tea Party. Noam's been marrying him with the Tea Party. His numbers are below 50%. For an incumbent to be at 47%, I think Noam Branson's going to win by 3-4 points.
That is a major warning sign.
And I think you look, I don't know if there will be exit polls, but you will see the gender gap, and you will see women voters be the X factor in this race and carry Noam.
The point that you make is really where we've seen, and there's been a lot of criticism about the campaign that Bramson's run, because in the end, his whole tagline was Tea Party with a smile, talking about his opponent, saying he's pro-life, he's against gay marriage, he's going down the social list here. At the end of the day, how much does the county executive really have to do with these? Very little. But that might be enough to your thing to say he's one of those guys in Washington, one of the Tea Party guys. Whether it works or not, we're going to see. All right, two big ballot initiatives that I think will be fascinating tomorrow, and one in each state, if you feel me. Polls say New Yorkers poised to approve up to 7 new casinos in New York. That is thanks in part to some controversial pro-casino language that will appear on ballots tomorrow. Dominic rolls his eyes at us because Andrew and I find this fascinating. Maybe we're the only ones. Now, you go across the river in New Jersey, voters seem overwhelmingly ready to approve a $1 hike in the state's minimum wage in a ballot measure that would then tie the minimum wage to the cost of living. This will put the state ahead of much of the nation in the minimum wage line. I know a lot of other states are looking at this. All right, let's first start in New York, Mr. I Roll the Bones.
That's not my case.
Yes. We talk about the language in it. We won't bore everybody at home, but it's the most leading thing we've ever read. Oh, yeah. That said, I think Cuomo's got a lot of he's basically hitching his wagon to this thing. He's making this a big component to next year for himself.
Well, he has. He's put a lot of his personal power behind it. He also needs the money that eventually is expected to come in from casino gaming down the road, because it's like a way of raising revenue for the state without raising taxes. That's manna from heaven for an executive on any level. So he's banking on his budgets to provide that additional income. And oh, by the way, he's looking to do a tax cut for next year when he's up for re-election. So there's a lot on the line
the
for
needle
him.
a little bit, isn't he, here?
Yeah, but and he really is married to. I mean, a robocall's going out tonight across the state. I think it's a good thing. Listen, New Yorkers realize that you go to New Jersey, you go to Connecticut, you go to Pennsylvania, we're losing out on billions of dollars each and every year to these other states, and we should have that option of casino table gaming here in New York State and keep the money in New York State.
There's not enough money, or gamblers, by the way,
Well,
to fill 7 casinos.
let's
But
keep
let's
it in
not
New York.
facts get in the way of a
Let's
good
keep
story.
it- let's keep
I'm
it in
with
New
it too.
York.
I'd vote for the thing, but it is curious. All right, but Dominic, minimum wage. I think a lot of states are going to watch what happens here. To attach the minimum wage to the cost of living, this thing passes and it looks like it's gonna. That math is really important for other states here to figure out where their line is.
Extremely important. But I'm going to be watching to see if it does pass. How will legislatures handle this? Because I have a funny feeling they won't even let it get to a ballot initiative in other states, because they know it will pass.
Yep.
And this will cost states a lot of, businesses ultimately passed on. But Republicans are gonna argue the same standard, tired, old arguments of why there should not be an increase
What's the new number?
to the minimum
What's the new
wage.
number going to be?
825.
825.
But here's the thing, Andrew. Here's the thing: by coupling it and having
There's a way around
certainty,
it.
but having certainty actually, I think, is okay for the markets, for businesses to know long range
What their fixed
what
labor
they're
costs are gonna be.
what they're
Yeah.
going to be. I think they're able to better prepare. The uncertainty, like during the shutdown, the debt crisis, that caused businesses to go nuts.
If there's one national race outside our region that's going to get people going, it's frankly 2 candidates that are getting tougher and tougher to root for different reasons. I'm talking about the race for governor in Virginia. Terry McAuliffe versus Ken Cuccinelli. McAuliffe, you probably know if you follow politics, not only a Democratic money man, former DNC chairman, and extremely close to one Bill Clinton, who's been campaigning with him nonstop. On the other side, you got Mr. Cuccinelli, Tea Party favorite. He rode the conservative wave, but that wave may have died out. Polls have McAuliffe by 8 to 10, but Andrew, they're tightening up here. And Cuccinelli, I'll say it, I think he's completely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Some of the stuff he said. If he wins, that's a major loss for Democrats.
It's interesting.
Symbolically more than
neither
anything
one of
else.
these candidates should win. If you think about it, there's so much baggage on each one, and the government shutdown hit Northern Virginia as hard as any spot in the country. That really hurt Cuccinelli. The current governor, Bob McDonnell, has a scandal that hurt Cuccinelli.
He's facing indictment.
And Cuccinelli has been, to the right of a lot of Tea Partiers in the country. Terry McAuliffe, a little too slick for his own good. I think McAuliffe is going to win this thing, but it's. To me,
But look at what he did to do it. He had to bring in Bill. He had to bring in Hillary.
But I think he was. Always going to do that. To me, it's the end of the Tea Party wave in a purple state. Virginia and North Carolina had been the states that had been sort of leaning back blue over the last couple of presidential elections. I think that wave may be over now, and I think we'll find out tomorrow night.
It's going to be interesting. It's a referendum. It can be argued that it's a referendum on the government shutdown. If McAuliffe does win, major victory for the Clintons. We'll all be watching Governor Christie in New Jersey and the governor's race in Virginia.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
When we come back, what people will be talking about after tomorrow's elections. Did Christie win big enough to smooth the path for the GOP nomination in 2016? Can anyone but Hillary stop Hillary from winning the Democratic nomination that next year? But first, a look at our coverage and our schedule here when it comes to RNN and Fios 1 all day tomorrow. It is Election Day, New York and New Jersey in 2013. We're going to have our coverage all day long here, and a special reminder, we will begin coverage on Fios 1 at 8 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock we're going to pick it up here on RNN as well. Also, speaking of the election, I'm going to have some endorsements coming up a little bit later in the program. All right, everybody, stay with us. When we come back, we will keep going with the election theme, but turning back the clock a little bit to find out what was going on behind the scenes. Could Hillary have actually been Obama's running mate last year? And why didn't Chris Christie get farther down on the short list for one Mitt Romney? Some of those answers in a tell-all book. We'll talk about that right after this.